All right, welcome back to Ducks and Pucks. This is your host Mike Walters, along with my co-host Eddie Jones. We're going to get you recapped on the games this last week, and we got lots of news to cover this time, Eddie. With injury news, some big trades made in the NHL, Las Vegas trying to make a push for a team, and some fan questions about what the Ducks need to do down the stretch here. And we'll also look at the games coming up in the next week. And we also have a special guest, Wayne, on the show. Welcome on the show, Wayne.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
All right, Eddie, let's get to it. The last game, well, we played Tampa Bay and we recapped that one and we got smoked. And then we went against Florida and we thought we'd have a better outcome, and the outcome was pretty much the same. We got handed it 6-2, a loss.
Yeah, and we said before, in the preview for this game last week that this is the Florida Panthers team from last year. They're a better team. They're just struggling to score goals, and obviously we're struggling to keep pucks out of the net in this game. And starting Briz was probably not the best idea, and found that out pretty early, letting 3 goals on 8 shots, and comes in and he doesn't fare much better. And they just jumped on us early. They got 2 power play goals. Penalty kill hasn't been great for us all season, and they kept going. Ekblad gets one. Palmieri brings us back a couple minutes later, and then we finish off the period with 2 more goals against and about 2 goals in 22 seconds for the Panthers. So they were able to score goals against us, and that's kind of been our problem in our last 7 to 9 games, is keeping the puck out of our net.
Yeah, that's been the big problem. And I mean, you've seen this too in this game. The odd man rushes. We've talked about this. The defense, they just getting picked off. They're getting caught cheating up ice, and they're just leading to too many odd man rushes, Eddie. And that's kind of been the downfall during this last stretch for the Ducks.
Yeah, and we've been talking about Stoner and Brewer and in Lovejoy recently as well, and how they've just kind of been falling asleep on the play. And you see the game against Tampa Bay, the worst one we've seen from Stoner and Brewer all season. Brewer laying on the ice and missing the puck, and Brewer failing to clear in front of the net, and that carries over in this game. And you could say Gibson came in and had a little bit better of a game, but all in all, you can't blame it all on the goalies unless it's Briz. So the defense was pretty much the issue again.
Yeah, I mean, that seemed to be the case in this game. And, going past that game into Carolina, and basically we figured that Gibson would start, and the Ducks went with Gibson. He leaned in there and did, he almost shut out Carolina, other than that one, funky goal that went over his shoulder and in. But again, the defense wasn't sharp in this game. The Ducks came out in the second period and pulled out a couple goals, and held the fort down, largely because of Gibson. But the defense just wasn't sharp. I mean, they gave up way too many shots in this game, and basically Gibson stole this one in Carolina.
Yeah, and it's been a typical effort from the Ducks lately. We've been getting outshot, and it's a game where we had to rely on the goalie again, and really, it's a game we should have lost. And it was kind of reminiscent of the last game against Carolina, getting outshot, getting outplayed for most of the game, and kind of squeaking out with a win. So, Wayne, what do you think? What did you really notice from this game? Good and bad from this game.
The only reason we won that game was Gibson stood on his head the whole entire game. Like 36 shots against in his second game back. That's outstanding. Outstanding.
Yeah, that's what fans have really come to expect from him, especially his strong start last season, and he's been kind of on and off this season. A lot of people are wondering if he's going to be the main guy, and we'll talk about a little bit more about that later for sure. But yeah, Gibson really the main reason we were in this game, and I guess you could say Bolesky too. He was a lot of people thought he picked up 2 goals in that game off Boschman, and I'm getting a stick on the first goal, but he was a big force for us in this game, like he's been all season.
Yeah, I mean that's the key, Eddie. Like you said, is Bolesky coming in there and doing his thing in the second period. But I mean, if you look at these shots, as Wayne mentioned, 36 shots for Carolina, 17 for the Ducks. I mean, that's something we got to change, Wayne.
Yeah, there's no way that we can be especially against a bottom feeder team like that. You can't be letting 36 shots against.
The key, I think, for the Ducks going forward in this, Eddie, is that we can't just rely on Gibson, because as you saw, we went into the Washington game on Sunday. We started Gibson. We got the goal first, and we even outshot Washington, but still, the Ducks ended up giving 5 goals up in this one, Eddie.
Well, yeah, you can rely on him if you're going to give him a chance. we've been relying on Anderson all season, and there's games where we've at least, even if we've played bad, we haven't played bad enough where it's been a problem, or given up so many bad chances where it's been a problem. But you see in the game yesterday where Ovi on the power play, that's kind of hard to stop, and his first goal, you really can't blame on Gibson as much as he was screened by 3 players and had really no chance of seeing it. He just had to get in front of it, and it went through 5-hole. But the 3 goals after that were all odd man rushes. Johansson, he had an odd man rush. Burakovsky, both of his goals are almost similar, where him and Ovi were 2-on-1 on I believe it was Fowler both times, and there's not much you can do, and Burakovsky buries both of them. So when you're hanging out your goalie out to dry like that, it's kind of hard to win a game, especially when he's just coming back from injury.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look at these odd man rushes, Wayne. And I mean, is there something that the Ducks need to do to fix this? I mean, is it the personnel making mistakes, or is it just the style of play needs to change?
Honestly, I don't really know what we have to change. Like, we obviously need another stay-at-home defenseman. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Eddie and I have talked about that too. I mean, it was evident in this game that the defense had some lapses. Eddie and I have been kind of tough on Stoner and Brewer lately, but if you look at this game too, Lovejoy has not been playing as well either, Eddie.
Yeah, and when we brought Lovejoy in, it was a great surprise to see how well he'd been playing, and he came from Pittsburgh where he was a 7th defenseman, and he came in here and picked up his play and slotted in the top 6 pretty well, but. As of late, with all the team playing better, it's hard to see a guy like Lovejoy pick it up. You got to have Fowler and Vatanen and Lindholm and Boschman. Your top 4, really needs to carry the play. But when you look at the Ducks' top 4 and you compare them to Nashville and St. Louis and Chicago, it's not really comparable. And you see that in the stats where the goals for are pretty much around the same for those 4 teams, but the goals against are a huge difference with the Ducks. And the differential only being +9 and all the other teams being around +40. So, definitely I think if we're going to make any kind of move or any kind of change, it's going to be in defense. Offense has been pretty good so far this season, around par with the rest of the top teams in the league, but the defense has just been terrible.
And Nashville even more so now with the acquisition of France, and they'll be even more deadly.
Yeah, exactly, and that's another guy who comes off the market too, especially with Franzen's gone, obviously Tyler Myers in the Kane trade, and Mathot just being resigned. The dominoes are obviously falling. You'd expect the Ducks to make a move soon if they're going to make one, but there's less and less guys keeping on the market available. Mike.
Yeah, we talked about that, Eddie. I mean, last time we had talked about Myers on the podcast, and then what was it? 48 hours after the podcast, we said that. We weren't during the podcast we said we weren't going to get Myers, and then 48 hours after the trade's done, and then a couple days later Franz, and now just the Method re-signing. So I mean, who do you go for, Eddie, out there that's left on the market to try and improve the defense?
If we're gonna pick a guy, you really don't want a guy who's gonna come in and do the same kind of job. Obviously at the deadline last year, we picked up Robidas, and he did a decent job, but he didn't play that many games, obviously with his injury, and then only playing about 17 games for the Ducks. And then Brewer was another guy who kind of patchwork fixing, and Stoner in the offseason. And they've been all right, but nobody's came in and solidified a spot. So I think if you look at the guys out there, there's Yandel's name's been thrown around, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who I still don't think is going to leave Arizona, Sekera from Carolina, Petrie from Edmonton, and McCallick, another name from Arizona. They've got a lot of defensemen available. I think our best option is probably McCallick from Arizona. He's a right-handed D, which is what we need, and he's a defense first defenseman, and I think he's definitely our best shot if we're going to sign somebody. What do you think, Wayne?
You know what? McCallick's probably the best option as well, in my opinion. I'm just not 100% sure what we would be giving up for any trade, to be honest with you.
You could see that too, and giving up things, we've obviously heard Edom and his name thrown around, and obviously draft picks if a playoff team. Mike, who do you realistically see us bringing in? Who do you want to bring in, and what do you think is a good price to give up?
That's the concern. You see Buffalo and Toronto, basically going fire sale style on this, and now I wonder if Arizona's going to be the one next two that's going to try and rebuild. And if they are, then I agree with you. McCulloch's the way to go. I mean, Larson and Yandel, I like them too, but the problem with both of those guys is it goes back to our defense getting caught up ice. I don't want to bring in a Larson or a Yandel, have them cheating all the time and trying to score, which I know they can score, but we need to solidify the blue line as far as the stay home and defenseman, because that's the spot that we're lacking the most. So McCulloch would be the number one choice for me as well from Arizona. Sakara, I wouldn't mind from Carolina. I mean, there's word going around the Kings are trying to get him. And for those of you out there that haven't been paying attention and have been talking trash on the Kings, they've won 4 in a row and they're only 3 out of the last spot. So we could be playing the Kings, in the first round, if we hold on and win the division. And I'm saying that I know we're up now in double digits, but these last 9 games have been rough. So I think if we can get one of those players at a good price, and a good price to me would be Edom and maybe some kind of a draft pick, not necessarily a first rounder, but if you can get away with a second or third rounder and Edom for one of those guys, I would be down for that. I don't want to see some mega trade like Buffalo did, giving up 4 or 5 guys. That to me is too much, Eddie.
Yeah, and you're talking about the last 9 games and how the plays really declined after that 4-0 win against Vancouver, and we've seen the Ducks allow 39 goals in those last 9 games, which is about four goals against per game, which is just abysmal when you look at a team in the top of the Western Conference for most of the season, and how they've played in the last 9 games, only winning 3 and going a record of 3-5-1, and that's not lost on management and players. And Fowler had a quote the other day. He said about Bob Murray's been pretty adamant about trying to add another D-man. We feel comfortable with the group we have, but if there's somebody who can be brought in to help us, that's always good too. So that's not lost on the players. They know they're playing bad, and I think it's not all about bringing in another guy. As you said, a lot of guys are getting caught on odd man rushes, and it's just positioning and it's setting up the plays right and coach work, but if it's become a consistent basis for the guys like Stoner and Brewer, and if you can bring in a top 4, even another top 6 guy into the mix, and he can solidify a spot, that's definitely going to be a step forward for the Ducks.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the way to go. And the part of the problem we're going to have now too is some of the injury news that we've got to cover. The goalie situation. Anderson's out, with the crossbar incident. I've heard it was a concussion. I haven't been able to verify it, but it seems kind of likely with him being placed on the IR and them mentioning that, hey, he's going to be gone at least 3 games. So now you roll with Gibson and Brizgalov as the backup at least for a little while now. I think the Ducks will be fine in the goalie position. I think Anderson will come back and he'll just do fine, and I think Gibson will do fine as well. But, last night, Eddie, a big problem was we lost Bolesky in a nasty, face first into the boards crash where it looked like he separated his shoulder. Again, that's what I've heard, but not confirmed. And then Vatanen with a lower body injury, too. So now you got your second best scorer and your number 1 scoring D-man out. It's going to be a little bit of a rough patch here the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and that's why you see Manson and Edom get recalled, and they're going to fill the spot for now. Obviously, you've been talking about how you wanted to see Manson come up and play a spot for Stoner, and it's obviously unfortunate that now it's Vatanen who has to get replaced because of injury, and Edom, who we've been looking for more from him all season. He gets another chance to prove himself, and we definitely think he's more than capable of playing in the NHL eventually. It's just he's got to take more advantage of the chances he gets to play for the Ducks when he gets called up, and he's going to probably get a chance to play on the 3rd or 4th line. I don't see them slotting him in at Bolesky's spot. Probably bump up Cogliano from the 4th line or from the 3rd line up to there. Or maybe pop up Smith Pelly or somebody else. We'll have to see what they do there. But in regards to your talks about Gibson, we've seen a mixed bag of play from him so far. Not that he's really had any Brizgalov-like games, but a lot of people think he's going to be the number 1 for the future, and obviously we've seen how well Anderson's been this season as well. Wayne, where do you think Gibson is now, and do you think he's ready for the number 1, or do you think he still has a couple years before he becomes the elite goalie everybody's been hoping for?
To be honest with you, I honestly think that in a couple of years we'll have this another Hiller situation. We're gonna have three goalies that are ready, and we're like with Bobkov, Anderson, and Gibson. Like we'll have three NHL caliber goalies. So on like what I think is that we'll need to get rid of at least one of them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with the way it depends on the play. Obviously, we don't know how much Gibson's going to develop. Anderson even as well. We've seen how well he's been playing lately, and Gibson could eventually become, he could become an elite goalie in this league, or we could see another situation like Dallas had with Jack Campbell, where it doesn't really exactly pan out. Mike, I'm going to ask you the same question. Where do you see Gibson? Do you think he's ready, for the number one? Is he NHL ready, or is he gonna needed more time in Norfolk or San Diego in the next few years?
I think Gibson is NHL ready, and we talked about this before in the beginning of the season. I know we had Danny on before, and she thought he wasn't. I think he is, but I think right now the main man is going to be Anderson. And I think that's who the Ducks should stick with. My favorite's Gibson, but we talk about, what's best for the team on our podcast, and we're not homers here. We talk about what's the best thing to do, and when things are going wrong, we talk about when things are going wrong. And I think Gibson is pretty much there, but I think part of the problem, and you kind of touched on this, Eddie, is that if we roll with Anderson, Gibson's not going to get that much time in the NHL. So it is going to be a situation like Wayne brought up with Hiller, where we could see, Bobkov coming up too, and then the Ducks are going to have to figure out something. If they're going to go with Anderson, then we're going to have to lose either Gibson or Bobkov and get some quality players, Eddie.
Yeah, exactly. And that comes full circle around to trades, and we move a bit away from the Ducks just for a bit. We've had a couple trades that have recently happened. Obviously, the Kane trade happening after. A couple of days after our podcast, I believe it was Evander Kane and Bogosian, and a goalie prospect moving from Winnipeg to Buffalo for Drew Stafford, Tyler Myers, prospects Brendan Lemieux and Joel Armia, and a first-round pick of Buffalo's choice, which will most likely be either St. Louis's or the Islanders. In your opinion, Wayne, who do you think won that trade?
Currently, Winnipeg won the trade hands down. Like
Okay.
for the right now. For the future, it all depends on if Kane smartens up. Like if he is the 30 goal scorer that has the skill set to be, then it's an even trade right down the middle.
Yeah, and I could definitely see it too. And if Buffalo ends up picking up a Jack Eichel or a Connor McDavid, and you play Kane on his wing, he's definitely could reach his potential of being a 30 goal scorer. As long as he gets his attitude right. I see it kind of this situation is sort of like Tyler Seguin when he was with Buffalo. I mean with Boston. When he was put on the fourth line. Wasn't really, he's a locker room problem out partying, and he gets traded to Dallas and then becoming an elite player in the league. We can see the same thing with Kane, but I agree with you with Winnipeg being the winners of the trade right now. Obviously Drew Stafford and Tyler Myers are able to slot right in their lineup and be definitely an improvement on how Kane and at least Kane was playing at the time. And prospects Brendan Lemieux and Joel Armia, who aren't no slouches either, and then a first round pick to add even more to a prospect pool that's pretty deep for Winnipeg already. Mike, I'm gonna ask you the same question. Who do you think won the specific trade?
Oh yeah, I agree with both of you on this. I think Winnipeg for sure won the trade for now, and Wayne touched on this too. It's really key for Buffalo on how Kane is going to come out after the injury. Obviously going forward next season. We know that this trade was not made for Buffalo this year. They don't have any hope of making the playoffs. They're way out of it. So it was a future deal for them. I still think Winnipeg comes out ahead, and I think this kind of rolls into the next trade, Eddie. I think, Winnipeg makes this trade. You look at the standings, they have 68 points, at least at the time of this podcast. And the way that they're going to go into the playoffs, if they hold that spot, they're going to play Nashville. So who makes the next trade? Nashville makes the next trade, and they get Franzen. So to me, Eddie, if I'm a Ducks fan right now, which obviously we are, but I'm really worried about Nashville in the Western Conference.
Oh yeah, and the Leafs are obviously going with the rebuild, or at least a small one so far. You can see more moves from them eventually. But Franzen was another target that had been rumored to go to the Ducks, and now he's off the board. And Santorelli's been a bright spot for pretty bad Toronto team this season, and they both are former draft picks of the Predators, and they go back to Nashville, and it makes Nashville, who's already been a surprise and such a great team this year, and they add two big pieces offensively and defensively in face, and even in Santorelli's case, and this just makes them an even better team, and it proves that they want to make a run for the Cup, and this makes them, if they weren't already, legitimate contenders, and definitely a bigger threat to the Ducks, and maybe a second round or a Western Conference final if we can make it that far. Wayne, what do you think this puts Nashville in, and obviously this makes them more of a threat. Are you worried about facing them in a possibly a second round situation?
Oh, for sure. Nashville's got one of the best defensive corps in the league now. Like Weber, Jones, France, and those guys, Yossi even. Like they're top defensemen. Like offensively for sure. Like even defensively, they got a good setup going.
Yeah, and it seems like every trade that they've made, since the steal of trading Erat for Forsberg has just improved the team. And I believe at the beginning of the season we had our predictions for the season. I think we even only had Nashville just barely making the playoffs, and now they're at least 5 points in the lead in the NHL, and definitely been one of the surprises of the season. And with all these trades happening, hopefully it will cause a domino effect, and we'll see one of these guys go to the Ducks. With sad news that was recently announced, he only played for the Ducks for one season, but Steve Monador passed away. I have not heard how, but he passed away at 35. Sad news here, Mike.
Yeah, I mean that was surprising yesterday because I remember getting ready for the game and doing the game preview and getting everything out and ready, and I heard that. And it's just unfortunate. I mean, 35. I mean, that's my age. So it's like, I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, it's just so young. I was happy to see that the Ducks, did do a moment of silence, and Phil Hewitt made a little announcement for the game, which, I'm always big on the Ducks and how they're a class act organization. So I was happy to see them do that before the game, Eddie.
Yeah, exactly. And we've seen them do a lot of stuff like that recently, and kind of move on to a lighter note and get away from that. I'm not sure if you saw it, or I'm pretty sure most people have seen it now. The Kings had their retro yellow jerseys come out, and a lot of mixed opinions on them, and I was in the camp of that. They were completely hideous. Did you guys see those jerseys, Wayne?
Worst jerseys ever. Like there's not a maybe Nashville's yellow ones and Buffalo's, but those are just terrible. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing good about those.
When you put yellow on a jersey, it's hard to make it work.
For sure.
Mike, did you get a glance at those jerseys too?
Yeah, I think I was blinded for about an hour. I mean, they're terrible, 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 terrible. I mean, if you're gonna put a little bit of yellow in there with some purple or something like that, like they're, trying to go a little bit old school, but try and make it a little bit more modern, then I could see it. But the way those ones looked, oh my God, it was like the construction workers were out or something on ice.
Even with us being Ducks fans, obviously we hate like the Kings, but I've heard it from Bruins fans, everyone saying they're just not right. That jersey should not be in the league.
I think as well as just the yellow helmets is what made it that much worse. It just added to, at least make the helmets purple or something, but it just blended too, it was too much for me to see.
For sure, Eddie. Talking about, the Kings and the playoffs and all this stuff, we had a question from Alex. He asked us about the playoffs, about who would we want to play and who wouldn't we want to play. And, currently right now, Eddie, we would face Hiller and the Calgary Flames. Obviously, Vancouver and San Jose are right there. They're all bunched up. They're only a point separated with the Kings on the outside. Who would you want to face and who wouldn't you want to face?
I think just because of our record right now against Calgary, in Calgary, and just how we've they're a good team, and they're a good young team, but that's another reason why I think I'd want to face them, is they're a young team. They're playing well in the season. They're having some success. But the Ducks know how to beat Hiller. They're a young team that won't have as much playoff experience, and how we've dominated them at Honda Center, in the last decade at least, is another reason why I definitely want to play Calgary. San Jose definitely not, especially how they beat us this season. I know they're notorious for choking in the playoffs, but I don't want to risk it with the way we've played against San Jose this season. And Vancouver, Ryan Miller could steal a series at any time, and you can see guys like Rabada and the Sedins, and if BX has all had playoff experience. So I think if I had to pick somebody, I'd probably pick Calgary.
And what about the Kings? Would you like to play the Kings in the first round? As some of the fans have been harping on me, revenge, payback, let's take them out.
It would be nice to take them out, but do you really want to play the defending Stanley Cup champions in the first round? I'd honestly, I'd rather see them not make the playoffs. I'm sure most of the Ducks fans would like to see them not make the playoffs, but it's always nice to get revenge. But I'd still go with Calgary, and if Minnesota squeaks in over Calgary, then Minnesota. If I had to pick two teams.
Yeah. What about you, Wayne? What do you think? Who would you play or not play in the playoffs for the Ducks?
I completely agree with Eddie. Like I don't want to play the Kings either because the Kings wear you down in a series too. Like
Exactly.
they're a deep team. Like we're gonna be on our toes the entire series. Like if it goes 7 games, then you're exhausted for the next round. Like I would rather get in a sweep or a 5 game series against Minnesota or Calgary first.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the thing. I think even if we do some tweaks to the team, which we're going to talk about that in a little bit, and we right the ship here, going into the final 5-6 weeks, I think the Ducks could beat the Kings in a 7 game series or 6 game series this year. I really, really do. If we do certain things that we're going to talk about, but I think, like you said, Wayne, is a good point. Is say we do beat them in 6 or 7, but then we're so exhausted that when we go in the second round, we go to play a San Jose, and it's going to be tough. San Jose smoked us this year 4 out of 5 games. Let's just be realistic. I don't want to play the Sharks. The only other team I might want to play is Vancouver. I know, like Eddie said, that they could steal a couple, but we have beaten them 3 out of 4 games. So if we didn't play, I would take the Flames first, but if not, I wouldn't mind Vancouver either, Eddie. But I agree with both of you guys. I don't want the Kings in the first round.
Yeah, and about how we talked a bit already about trades and how the Ducks are gonna have to improve, and a question that's been thrown around is, are the Ducks just in a little slump? Are they going to come out of it, or is there more to the story? And obviously we've seen in the last 9 games how they've been the only worst teams in NHL have been the Sabres and the Devils, and that's kind of bad company to keep. And letting in 39 goals in the last 7 games is terrible as well. And we to look at it, it's kind of interesting and frustrating to see how the Ducks have been this season. Statistically, they've been average. They haven't done anything amazing. Goals per game, they're 10th, and goals against per game, they're 19th. Power play and penalty killer, 16th overall for each of them. And this is a team who's for most of the season been first in the West, let alone first in the NHL, and somehow we're just average in everything. All the 1 goal games, the record everybody obviously knows about it. It's weird to see. Where do you think they've gone wrong? Does anything to improve? Obviously defense. What do you think is the case with our special teams and everything being so average, Wayne?
Well, I don't understand it really. Like our power play, we got Getzlaff and Vaughn in on the point with Kessler in the middle. Like that's some of the that's a face-off win almost every time, and a bomb on the point with Vaughn. Like it's I don't know. I think we should be doing a lot better. I think we're trying a little too hard to be fancy and score the nice goals. Like put Maroon in front of the net and shoot the puck at him.
Do you see it just being a coaching thing, or is it like the players not really playing the power play how the coach wants?
Well, if you look at Boudreaux when he was in Washington, he had a excellent power play, but like it might be a large part with that Ovechkin's there, and he scores a lot of power play goals. But I don't know. I don't really know what to blame it on.
Mike, what do you see as being the issue? Obviously, you look at our roster and you see Getzlaff and Perry and Vatanen and Lindholm Fowler, potential power play quarterbacks, and Vatanen's been so good on the power play this season. What do you think is the problem with the power play and the penalty kill, and why they can't seem to get anything going?
I think the biggest problem, Eddie, on the power play is for the Ducks is it's getting set up. It seems like every time we get a power play, they can't get in the offensive zone and just get set up. It seems like it takes 30 to 40 seconds every power play to get set up. They get in there. When they get in there, they get a couple good chances. But even again, like last night, I can't remember what period it was, but there was a chance Getzloff had, and he passed it right in front of the net, and it's just like at this point, Wayne touched on it too. You get Maroon in front of the net or somebody else, another forward. Cogliano, he had a nice one in front of the net last night. You just get them in front of the net and just shoot and get a rebound, a bounce, a deflection, something to get in there. Because if you're trying to make a fancy pass to get in the zone and then you turn it over, then you got to restart the power play. Same thing's been going on while in the zone. We've been doing that. And instead of getting those ugly goals, which is what the Ducks really need to do, we need to start scoring ugly goals like we did in Carolina. Those 2 goals we got, they were ugly. And you know what? I loved it. I don't care. Get in front of the net, get a bounce, get a deflection, and just get it in there. That's the way to do it, Eddie.
Yeah, do you think we should just toss the 1-3-1 that they've been playing most of the season and, just throw? I know if we had Derek and Mike on from Section 328 podcast last week, and they said, just throw a guy like Perry. How do you not throw, perennial goal scorer like Perry, and with his size in front of the net, and just sit him right in front of the goalie and get a stick on the puck. And I think that's probably the best option. It's just to mix things around. The penalty kill, having a 16th in the league isn't terrible, but when you want to be one of the top teams, you got to have something. You got to have one of the two at least in the top 10, if not the top 5. And I think this is the same last year and the year before. Is the power play hasn't seemed to get going, and has streaks where it's all right, and then the penalty kill is a problem too. And I think just making a change. If it's coaching, maybe not Boudreaux, but somebody else in the organization and whoever. Just change something up, fix something with the power play, and maybe throw Perry in front of the net.
If you look at our team and our team is just gritty. Like we don't have the huge dangler like Patrick Kane or Crosby or like even Gustav Nyquist had, he was skating around the zone the other day for a minute on his own. We need a guy in front of the net, a guy to dig in the corner every time. We can't just depend on someone to dangle through the other team's defense.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Wayne. And that's, Eddie touched on it, you touched on it. That's the thing. You have to have somebody like Valesky in front of the net, Perry in front of the net, Maroon, Cogliano. You got to get those guys on the 1 and 2 power play units in front of the net, and just creating havoc, create traffic. Maybe get the defender to cross-check you and get another penalty. Screen the goalie. I mean, that's how you get pucks in there. I mean, that's the kind of play that you're going to have to do on the power play. Going to the defense on shorthanded situations, Eddie, I think really it's a size issue. That's what it comes down to me. You bring up Manson, you put him in there, and you have him block out anybody that gets in front of the net. Straight up and simple. Or we go out and we get another guy like McCulloch, another 6'2", 6'3" type guy, and you have those guys on there. I mean, we talked about this before, Eddie, and obviously we're not going to get a Pronger or a Niedermeyer type person. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, we could sell the farm and, go, hey, Weber, come on over here, which they're not going to do that after this last trade. But that's what you're going to have to do on the penalty kill. You're going to have to get some big bodies, too, that are going to be able to do the opposite. Clear out the space for Anderson and Gibson, let them see the puck, and not let the other team get these ugly goals.
Yeah, and that's what we've tried to do. Obviously bringing in Stoner and Robidas and Brewer, and you could see kind of what Bob Murray's wanting to do, and he's wanted to bring in a guy who's specifically defense first. And obviously, Boschman is that way, but you look at Fowler and Vaughn and Lindholm, and not to say they're bad defensively, but they're definitely thinking offense first most of the time. And you want to bring, if you're going to try and find a guy like Pronger or Niedermeyer, there's only get a guy like that, and that's through the draft. Nobody's going to be trading those guys during the season, and rarely is anybody like that going to be available in the offseason or free agency. So if you're going to get a guy like that, you're going to have to get him in the draft, which for us is even harder because we're a team that's going to make the playoffs we would hope almost every year with the team that we have. So you got to pick up a guy who's a top 4 who's available from struggling teams, and we've talked about that with McCalloch and potentially Char, who was rumored to be going anywhere. Those are the only times you find those guys, when they're late in their career and when the team's struggling. And it's hard to find those types of guys. And it all really comes down to is how much does Murray believe in our blue line, featuring a top four, Fowler and Boschman and Lindholm and Vatanen. And if he doesn't believe in it enough, how much is he willing to spend on like a legitimate upgrade? That's really what it all comes down to, Mike.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Eddie. And to me, if the Ducks don't make some kind of move, we're not going to go all the way. I'm just going to go on a record saying that right now, unless something is done, whether it's you bring up Manson and you boot out Stoner or Lovejoy, or you go trade and get someone. I'm just going to tell you right now, because, and I think Eddie and Wayne, you'll both agree, blue lines win championships.
All sports. In all sports, that's the truth.
Yeah, exactly. And we had another question from Alex on Twitter, and he said, if the Ducks exit early in the playoffs, where should be changes made? Should it be made in the players, or should it be made with the coaching staff? Wayne, what do you think?
Oh, definitely not the coach. I don't think, anyways. I think Boudreau's we hired him 2 days after he was fired. I think.
Yeah.
Like you don't just fire a guy like that after 3 seasons or anything. I think there's got to be a legitimate defensive upgrade.
Yeah, I agree with that. And obviously, Boudreau's success in the regular season is one of the best that we've seen, and you see obviously in Washington he struggled to get past the second round, and that's what a lot of people have been harping on here. What do you think, Mike? Do you think it's if we don't make it past first or second round, is it time for Boudreau to go, or is it maybe time for Murray to go, or assistant coach or something, or is it time to make a big trade and shake things up?
Yeah, a lot of people have been hitting me up and they're getting irritated with Boudreau, and I understand it. I mean, like you said, he's had Washington in first or second in the Eastern Conference the time he was there. Now you look at the Ducks, who've been first or second in the league as well too the last couple of years. And we followed the same trend, though, in the playoffs. We've lost in the first and second round. Unless the Ducks go into the first round and, get blown out, 4 games in a row or something, I don't think Boudreau should be moved. I mean, it would have to be something – we'd have to do so awful in the playoffs. And I don't think that we're going to keep doing awful like we are now. Just going back to what I said earlier, I think the Ducks are still going to make the playoffs. I think they'll still win the first round. I just don't see them going all the way unless we do make a trade. And that's where the change is going to have to come. We have to figure out something on the defense, either now when we make a push or when it goes into the offseason. That's what we're going to have to do because, Eddie, we talked about this too. This may be Boschman's last year too. So we got to figure out, we may need to pick up not just 1, but 2 defensemen going into next season.
Yeah, and for sure. And, we could, I think right now it doesn't have to be too drastic. And, I still like to keep guys like Edom and Stefan Nason and Nick Ritchie and Kurt Dillies and but defensively, for prospects we've got Shea Theodore, Manson, who's been called up a couple of times, but we don't have a real powerhouse guy in the farm, and I think we need to have a top 10 pick to pick up a guy like that. As long as we keep our first round pick as well, I think that's key. I don't know what it will take to get a guy like McCalloch. I don't know what Arizona's going to want. But I think if we can keep our pick and maybe move one of the forward prospects to get him, but I don't think it'll cost too much, especially since it's at the deadline. But we'll have to wait and see and see who they move.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Wayne? Do you think the Ducks need to make a move? I mean, it doesn't have to be blockbuster, but some kind of a move so we can go farther in the playoffs.
Oh, for sure. We need help defensively. There's no doubt about it. We have, like Eddie said before, 3 of our 6 defensemen are more offensive minded, and the other 2 maybe, or the other 3 maybe neutral, other than Boschman.
Yeah, exactly, and that's been the concern, is that you got 1 stay-home defenseman, Boschman, Eddie, and I think you need at least 2 if you want to go deep in the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure, and you look at most of the teams, even if he's not defense first, he's a two-way guy. You look at St. Louis, they've got Pietrangelo and Shattenkirk, and those are 2 solid two-way guys. Keith, even though he's a good offensive defenseman, he knows he's an elite guy. He's going to play defense as well, and Seabrook as well, Weber. Weber is by himself is all you need. Like you look at the other guys on Nashville's defense, they're good. Jones is a good prospect, and Franzen's gonna add to them, and Yossi's good. But Weber is one of the best, if not the best, defenseman in the league. And even you look in the Eastern Conference, where you don't need as much of a stronger defense, but Tampa has Hedman, and Boyle, and Strawman was there, and Montreal has Subban and Markov, and so in Pittsburgh, you need a guy, a good two-way guy, if not a good solid, defensive defenseman to add to the offense that you have, and that's something the Ducks are either going to have to trade for or add in the draft for sure. With some that's come up recently, we talked about expansion a lot a couple podcasts ago, and Las Vegas has made a huge step forward into having the NHL team. They started a ticket drive for their season ticket tickets, and they needed to reach the 10,000 minimum. I haven't heard much news on it recently, but I heard up to 4 days ago they were halfway towards their 10,000 minimum in 48 hours, which is not too bad. Obviously, with the Canadian markets, and you see in Winnipeg, them reaching their 13,000 minimum in less than 24 hours, and obviously that speaks to the Canadian market and much success they've had. But what do you guys think realistically of a franchise in Las Vegas? First with you, Wayne.
I don't understand it really. Like, going back to the Winnipeg sellout, it sold out in under 20 minutes. Like the 13,000 under 20 minutes. Like, and they're not even halfway there in 48 hours. Like, I just don't understand. I think the people that live in Las Vegas they won't be the loyal fan base. Like, the casinos will buy all the tickets and give them out to people that go there, and they won't have people like repping the jerseys, or they'll just have people that are there on bachelor parties, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's hard to compare Las Vegas to Winnipeg. Obviously, Winnipeg's had a franchise before, and the fan base has been there. And if you look at Quebec too, and Quebec City's had a team, so the fan base is there. But I think if you run this in Seattle, for example, if you want to make sort of realistic comparison, I think Seattle probably would be able to sell it even quicker than Las Vegas, and I don't see why Quebec or Seattle has moved towards this before Las Vegas has. And you look at a lot of the people buying season tickets, and Dana White, Floyd Mayweather, Wayne Gretzky, Daniel Negreanu. A lot of these guys are guys who have ties either to the NHL or to Las Vegas, and they're buying season ticket packages. I know this is only 4 or 5 guys, but you got to think there's a lot more celebrities who have ties to Vegas who are going to be buying tickets. They're not going to be there every game, and not that that matters to the revenue, but you're not going to see as many faces in the stands. And I believe it's a 17,000 seat arena around is what they're looking to build, and 10,000 minimum if they sell that, where you still got to sell 7,000 more seats, and I think in a place like Las Vegas that's going to be a little bit hard, in my opinion, extremely hard. I have a lot of doubt about a franchise there. Obviously, they've had a successful AHL team before, but it's hard to build a team in pretty much uncharted territory. Building it from the ground up where they don't have over 50 years of hockey history, and it's kind of hard to start a hockey from nothing. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I agree with both of you on this one. I just don't see it happening. Vegas is such a transient population with people coming and going. Like Wayne said, people, having bachelor parties and all this other stuff going, and the casinos giving out tickets for God knows what reason. They'll give them out for who knows, if you buy a certain package at their hotel, whatever. I don't really see it going anywhere. I think the best bet for the NHL is to go to Seattle. With the recent success of the Seattle Seahawks, they've talked about the Supersonics coming back in basketball as well. I think Seattle would be a good fit, and I think Quebec would be another, a good fit too, because they're hungry there for a team. So I think those are your best 2 locations, Eddie, especially because, we got to get 2 more teams to balance out the conferences as well.
Yeah. And you look at Las Vegas too, and you would say maybe if Las Vegas had another team, basketball would probably work there, baseball, football would most likely work almost anywhere in the U.S. So if they had a team there, but they don't really have anything, so it's kind of hard to build a hockey team in a non-traditional market. But it has to be said, 5,000 plus tickets in 2 days. It's pretty impressive for a team in a non-traditional market, but it still is a non-traditional market, and you do have to sell. You'd like to sell 14,000 to 16,000, if not a sellout on every night. And do you really see that happening with the struggles in Arizona and the struggles in Florida? Is this really a sound investment? And with Bettman showing up at the ticket drive, this looks more likely to happen, even though with a lot of people having doubt about it.
What I think Bettman's trying to do, like if you put another team in Canada, I think you may be taking away like interest from another Canadian team.
Mhm.
Everyone in Canada is watching hockey. Let's be honest. So, like, why go for them when there's untapped potential in Vegas? Maybe.
And I'm sure they have the money to risk it in there. But in my opinion, I see it being another Phoenix or another Arizona, and it might work out. But you never know. It's hard to tell with a situation like this. I'm surprised they haven't looked at elsewhere. I know there's been rumors of it, and this still isn't a for sure thing. We can't sit here and say that this is for sure gonna happen. It's still very much up in the air, and if they don't even meet the 10,000 minimum, it might not even be a thing. So it all depends, and I'm sure the NHL will make a decision. What we can pretty much tell from this is they are looking to expand, and they'll most likely expand within the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, and we're just going to have to keep our pulse on it and keep everybody updated. What's going to happen in the next week or two, as we will. And coming up in this week, we're going to be facing Tampa Bay, Calgary, and Edmonton, Eddie. And what's your thoughts? I mean, Tampa Bay smoked us, and now we're a little bit shorthanded. We're going to be at home, but what do you think? How we're going to do on Wednesday night against the Lightning?
We're gonna have to play a lot better. That's pretty much all I can say. Like, the way we played against Tampa Bay last time defensively was the start of, or at least in my opinion, one of the worst defensive games we played all season, and it showed why we didn't have any trust in Stoner and Brewer, and maybe we'll have another defenseman by then. I doubt that early, but we'll have to see how it goes. And I'm not too optimistic for it. Obviously, I want them to win, and I think they still can win with the team they have. But this is an important game to keep us up. With St. Louis and Nashville, now we've slipped down to third in the Western Conference, and Chicago's right behind us. But we want to keep getting the points, and it's going to be at home, which hopefully is going to go to our advantage. But we're going to have to get out to a fast start and work the forecheck, which hasn't been really that great. It was worked pretty good against Washington last game. Obviously, we didn't win the game, but get back to a good forecheck and play sound defensively to beat them.
What do you think, Wayne? What about our chances?
Like I said, or like Eddie said, he's like neither of us are really optimistic about our odds against Tampa, but I think we need to slow down some of their skilled guys. Like be physical with Stamkos and Tyler Johnson and Palat and Kucherov. Like they're not the biggest guys in the league. Like we gotta slow those guys down.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's been the problem Eddie and I have talked about too is, neutral zone. Neutral zone has I think, been, probably one of the biggest areas of concern on the defense, Eddie. It just seems like we let the other teams get the transition game going way too easily. And, that's going to be a big factor in this game. And then, we're going to Calgary. We're going to play Calgary, who, we like to get 2 or 3 goals on them, but then we let them run up and down the ice too.
Yeah, and it seems like, well, Calgary this season has been the best third period team in the league, and you could get up on Calgary in the first 2 periods, and no matter you could be up 3 or 4 goals, and you still gotta be in the game because they can run up the score on you in the third period and squeak out a win in overtime. They've been doing it all season. They have a young team, but they have a fast team, and they still have a lot of potential. Sam Bennett's looking to make his comeback from injury at the beginning of the season. Obviously, they've missed him, and what a difference he could be for them. He comes in if they want to try and make a push for the playoffs. They're up there with Nashville and in the surprises of the season so far, and they're a team when we're at home. There's a lot of confidence because of how good we've been against them. But when you go to Calgary, it's a whole different story where they've been pretty good at home and they've been pretty good on the road too. To be honest, for the team we thought they were going to be.
Yeah, and the problem that we're going to have here too is Boudreau's going to have to make a decision, Wayne, because if Anderson's not ready this weekend, who's it going to be? Gibson against Calgary and Edmonton, or are we going to see Gibson and then who, Brizgalov in one of these games?
See, that's what I would do. I would run Gibson against Calgary and then like a weaker opponent in Edmonton with Brizgalov, but still we got to play sound defense against Edmonton.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Edmonton, even though they haven't been playing as well this year, well, for the last couple of years, as a matter of fact, they still, they brought it against us. I mean, we beat them both times this year, but we beat them 2-1, Eddy, and 4-2. So I don't think they're just going to roll over in this game either.
No, and you could play the worst teams in the league and get blown out. No team is an easy opponent, and I've said that I don't know how many times, probably every week when we review these games when we play a team near the bottom of the league. But I know game's gonna be easy, and the back-to-backs are always hard, especially when we've got Anderson out, and most likely Brizgalov's gonna have to make the start unless Anderson can get back by this weekend. But yeah, I do see Gibson starting Friday. Even if Anderson's ready, just give him that extra day off and let him start Saturday against Edmonton.
Right, and then would you roll with Brizgalov against Edmonton if Freddie's not ready?
Yeah, I'd probably do that too. Just the way Brizgalov played, and Edmonton is the weaker opponent if you're going to compare them, and I think Brizgalov's most likely to start on Saturday if we have to.
Yeah, I concur, and I think that's the way to go. And we're gonna basically wrap up here. Just want to remind everybody we're still giving away tickets to the Ducks Oilers and the Ducks Stars games in April. Make sure you subscribe to the blog and the podcast, and we'll be doing some contest instructions and rules and stuff probably in a couple of podcasts coming up here. And I just want to thank Wayne for coming on as well.
Sorry, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
And we'll probably have you on in the future. We always try to get more and more people on here and talk about hockey. It's always good to get another perspective, and we'll catch you all in a week.
Yeah, and just a quick note before we close off, we're looking to do a live game broadcast hopefully in the future. We're still looking into it, so I'm interested in that. Hit us up, and also keep an eye on Twitter for us and TSN Sports and all them on March 2nd, deadline day, and hopefully the Ducks make a move and you guys can catch it.
The Anaheim